It was late afternoon in a crowded city. The air buzzed with the sound of honking cars, rushing footsteps, and vendors calling out to sell their goods. The traffic lights blinked red, halting vehicles in a long line stretching down the avenue. Inside one of those cars sat a man named Daniel. He was in his mid-30s, a successful professional who lived what many might call an ordinary yet comfortable life. He worked hard, paid his bills, and looked forward to weekends spent with friends or in the quiet of his home. For Daniel, that day was supposed to be just like any other. He leaned back in his leather seat, adjusting the air conditioning to cool himself from the sticky heat outside. His hand tapped against the steering wheel, following the rhythm of a song playing faintly on the radio. Life felt predictable, steady, and safe. He had goals to reach, deadlines to meet, but nothing out of the ordinary to trouble him. As he waited for the light to change, his eyes wandered toward the side of the road. That's when he saw her. A figure moving slowly between the stopped cars, her clothes worn and dusty, her hands slightly trembling as she clutched a tin can. She was begging, stopping at each car window, her lips moving with words that couldn't quite be heard over the roar of engines. Some drivers ignored her completely, staring straight ahead as if she didn't exist. Others waved her away with impatient gestures. A few rolled down their windows to drop coins inside her can. Daniel watched her draw closer, step by step. Her movements were hesitant, almost fragile, like each approach took immense courage. Something in her posture made him pause. She wasn't like the others he had seen before. There was something about her, something that caught his attention and held it tightly. When she finally reached his car, she gently tapped on his window. Daniel hesitated. Normally, he wasn't the type to engage with strangers on the street, especially beggars. It wasn't because he lacked compassion, but because he had grown used to thinking that his small contribution wouldn't really make a difference. But in that moment, something stirred inside him. Maybe it was the way her eyes carried both fear and hope, or maybe it was the quiet dignity with which she stood there, waiting patiently. He reached over, pressed the button, and the window began to slide down. He expected to see the tired, sunburned face of a stranger he would forget minutes later. But as the glass lowered, as their eyes finally met, Daniel froze. His hand stopped midway, his breath caught in his chest, and an icy wave of shock washed over him. Because the face he saw was not just any face. It was a face he knew. Daniel's heart pounded in his chest. His vision blurred for a second, as if his mind was struggling to accept what his eyes were telling him. He blinked, trying to convince himself it was some kind of illusion. But no, it was real. The woman standing before him was no stranger. She was someone from his past. Someone whose memory he had tried to bury. Someone he had once loved deeply, yet lost years ago without explanation. Her name was Emily. Years earlier, Emily had been the light in his life. They had met in college, shared dreams, laughter, and plans for the future. For a time, Daniel believed she was the one person who truly understood him. They spoke of marriage, of building a life together. But then, one day, she disappeared. No calls, no letters, no goodbyes. She was simply gone, leaving Daniel with nothing but questions and a hollow emptiness in his chest. And now, here she was, standing outside his car window, dressed in rags, begging for change. Daniel's grip on the steering wheel tightened. His voice trembled as he whispered her name. Emily. The woman's eyes widened. For a moment, the years seemed to melt away, and he could see the young woman he once knew staring back at him. But just as quickly, she looked down, as if ashamed. She didn't speak, only extended her hand slightly, the tin can rattling with a few coins inside. Daniel was speechless. A storm of emotions churned inside him, shock, confusion, sorrow, and guilt. How had Emily ended up here? What had happened to the bright, beautiful girl who once dreamed of writing novels and traveling the world? Why was she now begging on the streets? The light turned green, and cars around him began to move forward. Horns blared impatiently, but Daniel didn't move. He couldn't. His entire world had just been shaken to its core, and he knew this moment was about to change everything. And so began a story that would unravel mysteries buried in the past, reveal painful truths, and test the limits of compassion and forgiveness. Daniel pulled his car over to the side, unable to simply drive away. He rolled the window down further and spoke, his voice still trembling. Emily, it's me. It's Daniel. Do you remember me? Emily's eyes filled with tears. She nodded faintly but said nothing. The silence between them was heavy, filled with years of unanswered questions. He wanted to reach out, to offer her comfort, but she stepped back slightly, as though afraid of being too close. Daniel noticed the exhaustion in her face, the way her cheeks were hollowed, the lines etched deep into her skin. This was not the Emily he remembered, but it was still her. "Emily, what happened to you? Where have you been all these years?" he asked, his words spilling out desperately. She looked down again, gripping the tin can tightly, her shoulders trembling. Then, with a quiet voice barely audible over the traffic, she said, "Life happened, Daniel. Life happened in ways I never imagined." Those words hit him harder than he expected. Life happened, but what did that mean? How had she gone from a woman full of dreams to someone surviving off strangers' coins? Daniel's mind raced. He knew he couldn't let her disappear from his sight again. Not this time. He had been given a second chance to understand, to reconnect, and maybe, just maybe, to help her. He parked the car properly and got out, ignoring the stares of other drivers. He walked toward Emily, who looked startled by his sudden movement. But his expression was not one of pity, it was one of determination. "Emily, please, come with me. Let me take you somewhere safe. Let me help you." She shook her head quickly. "No, Daniel, you don't understand. You can't help me." But Daniel refused to accept that. He had already lost her once, and he wasn't about to let that happen again. And so began the journey that neither of them had expected, one that would take them through the shadows of the past, into the pain of the present, and toward a future that neither could have imagined.